Welcome to Surrender School, Emotional Sobriety Workshop. Chapter 4, Living Life Consciously.
Welcome back. Happy to see all of you again. Thank you for coming back. This was another packed chapter. I warned you last week, it was a lot of pack. Okay, so we're just going to dive in. Page 69. Dr. Berger starts the chapter by stating, recovery is the process of getting back something that was lost. Now, my initial response to that was, hey, wait a minute. Recovery for me was about getting something I never had in the first place. But I think what he's talking about here is awareness, that we have to wake up and claim our awareness again. We have to become conscious again. We have to regain our consciousness. Further on page 69, he says that awareness is essential for regulating ourselves, that it's a basic tool for living a meaningful and happy life. It is what we use to make contact with reality. But our awareness was lost when we put ourselves to sleep. And then on top of that, our addiction further distorted our awareness. So on page 70, the false self blueprint warped our consciousness to fit with our idealized self. It dictated what we should and shouldn't think, what we should and shouldn't feel, what we should and shouldn't do, what it was okay to be aware of and what it wasn't okay to be aware of, how we should and shouldn't behave. This false self blueprint filtered and distorted reality and kept us from processing appropriate feedback from our experiences, which is to say, it kept us from learning and growing. You know, you always hear in program, you stop growing and learning and maturing when you start using. Well, I was using it like age 7. But I do think it does stunt our growth, and it absolutely stunts our maturity. And it makes it really hard to learn from our experiences. That's why we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. We don't learn, we don't move forward. Page 71, Dr. Berger talks about addicts having a disconnect between our better selves and our behavior. This was interesting. He says we betray ourselves when consciousness is not translated into appropriate action. So we're awake, we are in a situation, we see the situation for what it is, we tell ourselves, what I really need to do is X. Okay. But then we don't take appropriate action. We don't translate that knowledge into action. Instead, we just stuff it down and we don't do the action. So, and that is a form of self-betrayal. I think that's a really beautiful way of putting that, because that's what it is. We tell ourselves we are not capable and likely to fail if we do try. So why try? This creates many self-limiting concepts and beliefs. He says we are much more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And I think that's really true. I think most of us come in these rooms after we've been beaten around by the disease for a while and think there's no way we can recover. And that's especially true if we've been in and out of these rooms for a while and not been able to recover. We believe we can't, so why try? So the first time it gets hard, the first mistake we make on our recovery path, boom, we're out the door again, right? Okay. Further down on page 71, Dr. Berger says, we take the first step toward achieving emotional sobriety when we rouse ourselves from sleepwalking and bring forth awareness. The steps really helped me do this. We awaken many different parts of ourselves that we had put into hibernation because they weren't acceptable. Page 72. But living consciously means more than seeing and knowing. It means integrating and acting on what we see and come to know, putting what we learn to use. I personally call this doing experiments and collecting data. This is what I do in my program. You know, I'm going into situations, I'm learning, I'm growing, I try this. Oh, it doesn't work? Well, that's information, that's data. Won't do that again. Go into a similar situation, let's try something else. Ooh, that worked. So that's more data. I'm going to do that again next time I find myself there. So it's not, oh, I was bad, or oh, I failed. It's, oh, I learned. Okay. It's a very different way of looking at this process. Page 73. The Shireen example is important. She didn't want to wake up because she didn't want to deal with what was going on in her life. That's why she told Dr. Berger that she felt worse when she wasn't drinking than when she was. I mean, and we can all relate to that. We can relate to that. When you stop eating, boy, the world has a lot of sharp edges on it. She needed to drink to blot out her awareness more completely. Unfortunately, it works really well. Page 73. If we wake up and become aware of what we want, what we'd like, and what we need, we can take care of ourselves. Dr. Berger calls this self-support. We take responsibility for what we want and what we would like. We don't manipulate other people to get our needs fulfilled. We take responsibility for doing it. Awareness and waking up helps us move our emotional center of gravity back over our own feet so that we are capable of supporting ourselves, capable of giving ourselves what we need instead of manipulating it out of other people. Page 74. When we wake up, we become aware of how we get in our own way, how we self-sabotage. He says we become aware of the actions we need to take. Great. But if those actions are taboo or not acceptable to ourselves or others or our culture or our religion or whatever, then we betray ourselves by cooperating with the tyranny of the shoulds in order to be loved, accepted, and to belong. My example, I'll give you a simple example. I became aware after hundreds of times trying that I couldn't go to dinner parties or potlucks and just eat whatever was served. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it and stay abstinent. I could not depend on others to serve abstinent food. That's not their job. And I knew I had to take 100% responsibility for my abstinence and my recovery. This showed me the action I needed to take, which was to bring my own food to these events. But that brought up a whole host of taboos against doing that. You know, what will the hostess think? People will think I'm weird. People will think I'm being rude, yada, 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 right? But until I could face down all of those, you know, you can't do that, and take the action I needed to take care of myself, I couldn't stay abstinent. I couldn't do it. I was expecting myself to do the impossible. Page 75. So when we face these kinds of situations where we're aware of what we need to do, but we feel that what we need to do is unacceptable, we preserve the mask of our false self, and that becomes more important than saving our life. We wind up failing our responsibility to ourselves. Dr. Berger reminds us that recovery involves the discovery of new possibilities. Turns out, as a matter of fact, I did not die of embarrassment by bringing my own dinner to parties and potlucks and stuff. That way I actually get to enjoy the company, engage in the conversation, and I leave being abstinent and feeling good about myself. I'm not standing in front of a table with mounds of non-abstinent food on it, trying to remind myself why I'm doing this abstinence recovery thing again, right? I don't even bother with the tables. I have my little cooler that I bring in. Now people know me. They don't even blink anymore. They don't blink. They would blink if I actually ate something off the table. They would probably make a comment then. Okay. So Dr. Berger described Shireen's alcoholism as a symptom of an underlying problem. He called it a growth disorder. A growth disorder occurs when we let fear run our lives. I've had a growth disorder my whole life. We become filled with toxic attitudes and unhealthy behaviors, and we fail to honor ourselves and what we truly want and need. So as soon as we become abstinent, we need to immediately get to work on our emotional sobriety, or we will not be able to stay abstinent. Page 80. I want to talk for a minute about the critical judge inside our heads. Okay. Shireen's judge, that nasty judge that was telling her how horrible she was for wanting what she wanted. Her judge prevented her from living her truth. So she became what she thought she should be, but it wasn't real. It kept her in her alcoholism, and it kept her miserable. When a need or desire emerges in us, it takes us out of balance. And to restore balance, we need to be able to respond to our own need. Shireen couldn't restore her balance because her judge wouldn't let her. So she was stuck. Page 81, Dr. Berger says, in order to get unstuck, we need to give ourselves the necessary support. It's a major challenge to give ourselves something we've never had. And I know you understand what I mean by that. We have to develop a part of ourselves that will support us. And I would add that we need to find a higher power or higher purpose that will support us as well. Those kinds of things are absolutely vital for getting unstuck. We have to be able, and sometimes giving ourselves the support we need is getting ourselves into therapy, is making phone calls to other members, is calling our sponsor, journaling, whatever, meditating, prayer, whatever it is, but we need to take that action and do it. It's you can say it a lot easier than you can do it. I understand that. Page 84. Dr. Berger describes recovery as a rescue operation. I love that, a rescue operation. We free our true self from the grips of addiction and from the prison constructed by the blueprint of our false self to achieve emotional freedom. Emotional sobriety is the result. We need to learn to say yes to what we want to and no to what we don't want. Remember, waking up is a practice. You're going to hear that word throughout this book. Practice. It takes small, consistent, daily effort. You're not going to snap your fingers and do this all at once. You're going to do lots of experiments. You're going to collect lots of data, and you're going to learn, and you're going to move forward a little bit at a time. So that's all I have for today. So we'll open up.
See you next week.